A shocking tragedy was discovered Saturday on Venour Road, a quiet little thoroughfare. Number 23 is occupied by Mr. Samuel Smith, employed as a road sweeper for the Mile End District Council. Mr. Smith left his house about 10 minutes to 6 in the morning going to work. When he returned to breakfast at 8 o'clock, his wife Lucy was dead, lying full length in the kitchen with her head nearly severed from the body. This is Edward Thompson reporting from frequency 1926.
Help me, please help me.
A man named Samson Silas Salmon, age 32, cousin of the victim, was inside the house when the murder was discovered. He was sitting by the side of the corpse and made no attempt to get away.
Do you know anything of this?
I did it. I suppose I shall swing for it.
What have you done it for?
It is all through you.
The constable described the accused looking at the bloody body on the floor, and before being led away, the accused asked,
May I kiss Lucy?
Dr. Edmund Arthur Lightbourne, divisional surgeon for the police, was called to the house at 8:30 a.m. He described Lucy Smith as lying on her back on the kitchen floor, fully dressed. She was lying in a pool of blood, and on examining her neck, he discovered that all the blood vessels of the neck were severed, also the windpipe. There were 2 knives on the floor beside her head, and both were covered with blood. One knife was a white-handled table knife, and the other was a black-handled clasp knife. There were signs of struggle in the room, and splashes of blood on the furniture. The death must have been almost instantaneous. Salmon, who had been living with the Smiths for some time, was recently told to find other quarters. This is supposed to have angered him, and made him especially bitter against his cousin, the deceased woman. He had written a letter to her, it is said, and this was delivered by the post about 8 o'clock that morning. Salmon has the reputation of being a somewhat excitable man. Mrs. Smith leaves a little girl named Minnie, age 5. The house was the object of much interest all day, crowds assembling outside in the early part of the day. At night, all was still. A feeble light burned in the passage, but the rest of the house was in darkness. A dog was howling in one of the yards at the back. During the hearing of the evidence, the prisoner sat sideways and looked very dejected. He is not a man of strong physique. Some remarkable evidence was given at the inquiry held on Monday at the Limehouse Coroner's Court into the death of Lucy Smith.
Salmon has lived with us since last April. He slept in the back bedroom.
On the 10th, Mr. Smith had to seek police protection on account of the excitable and extraordinary conduct of Salmon. He used foul language and brandished a knife, threatening to take their lives. Mrs. Smith had to run for her life. Later that evening, Mr. Smith found Salmon climbing over a fence into the backyard. Mr. Smith allowed him to stay in the bedroom if he promised to be quiet and, at his own request, to lock him in. The following morning, the accused asked for Mrs. Smith, but Mr. Smith told him she was out. She returned later, and Salmon immediately started nagging her, and again threatened to take their lives.
I'll have Lucy, Sam, and your Minnie.
A few days later, Salmon came to the house again, but Mr. Smith refused to admit him. Salmon again said he would kill Mr. Smith or his wife.
My wife told me that he was jealous of me.
Mr. Smith added that the grandfather of both Salmon and the deceased was in an asylum. Herbert Baker, a barge builder who occupied the upper part of the house, corroborated the story told by Mr. Smith. Mr. Baker had heard a scream, but was too ill to go downstairs. The inquiry was adjourned. This is frequency 1926. Join us next time for another story from the shadows of the past.